want to invite to join us here our newest corporate member, Rafael De Conto. Where is Rafael? Rafael, join me here. Rafael De Conto is a partner of Pinheiro Neto Advogados, the largest law firm in Brazil, working with major Brazilian and US and American corporations. And he just joined our family as a corporate member, and he just opened the first office of a Brazilian law firm in Silicon Valley. Parabéns, Rafael.
Thank you very much, Margarida. These are very kind words. We're very excited to be here in the Valley. It's a project that we started about 10 years ago, coming here very often, and realizing that there is so much to do, so much to learn from the environment here, that we said that we can't afford not to be around. So that's, and obviously we can't afford not to be at Bay Brazil. So thank you.
Obrigada, Rafael. So we just heard about the startup environment in Brazil. And now I invited Rafael to moderate a panel with large corporations influencing the digital transformation of Latin America. I'm very proud to invite our first panelist that will be join Rafael here, which is also the other newest corporate member of Bay Brazil. Where is Nando Ramani? Please join me here. Nando Ramani, engineering director of Uber, who just joined us as corporate members. Uber is opening a development center in São Paulo, and we are going to give a small hand on that project. We are so excited.
Obrigado.
Please, also joining us from Qualcomm Ventures, Alexandre Vilela. Alexandre Vilela is managing director of Qualcomm Ventures. He just started about 6 months ago, Alexandre. Yeah, so he left Intel Capital and is now at Qualcomm Ventures. Thank you for being here, Alexandre. Also with us, Henrique Ortegon. Where is Henrique? Oh, welcome, Henrique. Henrique Ortegon is the general manager of Salesforce Latin America, operating in Brazil also for a few years. Looking forward to hearing Henrique's updates. Also, Lucas Mendes Teixeira. Where is Lucas? So we were having dinner last night, and Lucas was complaining that his panel was too early. So next year is going to be in the afternoon. Lucas, so good to see you. Lucas has been to many of our conferences, I think 5 so far. Lucas Mendes, doing an awesome job at WeWork. He is the head of Brazil for WeWork. And Brazil, I think, just became the 5th market for WeWork. Thank you for being here. And last but not least, Mauro Gonçalves. Where's Mauro? Join us here, Mauro. Mauro is Director of Project Management and Strategy at Loom, which is just a spin-off of Google to become an independent company under Alphabet. So happy to have you here. Thank you so much, Rafael.
So, good morning, everybody. Thank you all, the panelists, for being here. It's an honor to share this panel with you guys. So why don't we start by each of you introducing yourselves very briefly. We start with Nando, which is not short for Fernando. I learned yesterday.
Yeah. It's similar. Close. I'm Nando Ramani. I lead the engineering for risk, safety, and insurance at Uber. an engineering director there. I'm also responsible for building out our newly announced technology center in Brazil. So we're super excited to work with Margarese and Brazil in helping us there. Thank you.
Alex Villela, Margarese, thanks for the invitation again. I am head of Qualcomm Ventures for Latin America. I also oversee network investments here in the US. So I know Margarese for many years. Glad to be here. So many familiar faces in the audience. So pleasure being here.
Oi, bom dia. Como tudo bem? They told me we were gonna do this in Portuguese so I can practice. My name is Enrique Ortegon. I'm responsible for Salesforce Latin America. I was born Mexican, but I spent a lot of time in Sao Paulo and all over the region. So thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this panel.
Hi, my name is Lucas. I'm here, even it's not that early, Margarese, but I'm a bit jealous on the chair, like the cinema movie star chair. It's fine. I mean, I studied at Berkeley, so every year this is a great excuse to come back to the Bay Area, and it's very nice. Like, and I'm even, I could say, proud to be a Brazilian. And every year I come here and you see more names and more people in this conference. So, congratulations.
Hi, I'm Mauro. I lead product development for Project Loom. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, so let's get started. I think that I'd like to have maybe you could give us a general idea of why Latin America, and specifically why Brazil, of all the places in the world. What it was attractive to you? Was it manpower? Was it the market? Was it the ability to, or the opportunity to share local experiences and expand it on a global basis? So, Nandu, I spoke to you yesterday. I know you were very, very enthusiastic about your new project there.
Absolutely. Three important reasons. One is, of course, Uber has a pretty global footprint. And the second thing is, in terms of like the market share, Brazil is the #2 market, behind a close second behind the US. And overall, Latin America is huge for us. And the second point is, in terms of talent, we always need more talent, and access to talent is important to us. Brazil and Sao Paulo in particular is becoming the talent hub in Latin America, so something we definitely want to tap out. And the third thing is, in terms of problem spaces, Brazil has a safety problem, and safety is a big issue. Especially in transportation, it's our #1 priority, all the way from preventing incidents, all the way from altercations to theft, robbery, to sexual assaults, and accidents that happen quite a bit. And also people feeling safe, which is an important part of people using transportation to go from place A to B. And what are the better place to open a technology center for safety, since it's a #1 priority as well, but Brazil. And talking to the engineers, and a lot of my friends in Brazil, they're very passionate about safety. Many of them in the US don't want to move to Brazil because of safety. And what can we do from a technology perspective to solve, right? And so, and that's the reason why we started. And from a technology perspective, many people ask me, is like, can technology actually solve safety? My high schooler wanted to solve people, save people's lives, and he wanted to be a doctor. I said, you can be a computer programmer doing a lot of machine learning and help save lives by improving safety. And a couple of examples there. Of course, from a safety perspective, we use a lot of data, sensors, data from the sensors, accelerometer, GPS, a lot of external data, weather data, correlated with a lot of internal data, use machine learning at various places. But a few things is, one is in terms of identity, right? How can we prevent bad actors from coming? We use a combination of data from external vendors, facial recognition technology, build the social graph, compute similarity models, and a lot of machine learning there. Also, even though we vet out bad actors, there's a lot of things that we can do with respect to preventing bad dispatches, right? We have billions of rides. Again, use a lot of natural language processing, identify signals to figure out whether these people are bad or not. And then the third aspect is in terms of response, right? And we try to prevent incidents from happening, but they still happen. Can we kind of detect these anomalies in real time? A lot of real-time data processing and statistical analysis. And of course, again, quite a bit of machine learning there to detect incidents from happening, right? So that we can prevent, but also with respect to when things happen, can we detect a crash and can we send a car immediately and kind of respond to them, right? So as you see, there's a lot of things. We haven't even touched like different modalities, right? If you think about Uber Elevate or scooters and bikes, right? There's a lot of things with respect to safety that we need to do. And given people are in general passionate about solving computer science problems in Brazil, but also safety, it made a lot of sense for us to open. And the reception has been phenomenal, right? When we talk to universities, I know people are talking about private partnerships and stuff like that. The universities actually have been very, I feel they're doing a lot of good research and they're very willing to work with us from a research perspective. They're also, what I found very heartening is when I talk to a lot of the tech CTOs and heads of engineering, many of them are, of course, wanting to help us and join us, but in terms of even help us build the ecosystem, right? I do think the private partnership you're talking about, I think that's very important for Latin America and Brazil especially. And so I'm working with a lot of other tech CTOs to figure out whether we can develop this ecosystem of really smart engineers, right? Doing really innovative problems as well. So excited.
Okay. Well, Qualcomm Ventures is actually the investment arm of Qualcomm. So I will try to bring here a kind of VC perspective. Qualcomm Ventures is in Brazil since 2012. Basically, we entered in Brazil in the first place, first because of the large market that Brazil has, and second, because the penetration of many technologies in Brazil is also relatively small. So for the region, we have kind of three main strategies in terms of investment thesis. One is around what we call software-defined networks. So basically companies that leverage networking effects in order to build large disruptive business. So companies like 99, companies like Logi, companies like CargoX could be examples of that. The second kind of strategy that we have for the region is what we call mobile-first enterprise applications. So companies that are using the benefits of mobility to empower corporations in the region and also to lead the digital transformation. And the third strategy that we have for the region is IoT, Internet of Things. So everybody knows about the 50 billion devices that will be connected to internet by 2022, right? So of course, there is a big infrastructure that has to be built in order to process that information. And of course, this will be a large opportunity, right? So those are kind of the three main areas or three main investment theses that we try to focus in the region. And so far, the results have been great. I mean, we had 2 exits this year. One was 99, was a very visible, very interesting exit. And the second one was Strider, which is a company in IoT for agriculture, was acquired by Syngenta in March this year. Right.
Well, I started saying just why not? I feel like we don't have to question it. But if you wanted to put it in data, I think there are 3 things that we're looking at Latin America from a perspective of what we do and what makes it attractive for us. So one is connectivity, right? When we think of the region, the connectivity of the population in terms of mobile cell phone adoption, some of the countries have actually at least 1 or more mobile phones per person. And, broadband adoption or broadband access is on the rise. So connectivity. 2, the workload for the clouds of cloud adoption. Actually, Latin America is one of the fastest regions in the world adopting in terms of cloud adoption growth, right after the north of Africa. So that's another one. And the third is, which is what we do, driving digital transformation, even across the pyramid. So more and more companies are being born digital, right? iFood, for example, it's a customer, so thank you very much. But they're born, with that DNA. Right, and then at the top of the pyramid, the largest corporations, I meet with them, and digital transformation is becoming way more relevant. Right, it's a matter of survival for those companies, and they look at companies like us, like Salesforce, to kind of help them walk that path. Right, and it's becoming something that's it's CEO is sponsored, this board is sponsored. So that those 3 factors: mobility, cloud adoption, and the relevance of digital transformation across the entire pyramid just makes it a very fertile ground for what we do.
Well, fantastic. I'll keep your line and take three factors. Last week, one of our founders were in São Paulo. After 2 days lunching in Brazilian restaurant, he told me that they would do business there just to repeat the food experience in São Paulo. So first would be food. Beyond food, in our case, we just have 1 year that we are in Brazil, but we were dating Brazil long before. Generally, the demographics of Latin America, not Brazil alone, a lot of people live in the cities, and the cities are completely unfunctional. So when you think about a solution that it's an easy way to have a place to work and where people can work in different places in the same city, it makes a lot of sense having a WeWork there more than in some US cities. So São Paulo is already the fifth city for WeWork. And the last one, we have some data that Brazil was the country with more members at WeWork that doesn't have a WeWork before we started. So we had a lot of Brazilians working inside our buildings here in San Francisco, in New York, in Miami, and also was the country with more people looking at Google for WeWork and also in our website that we were not there. So basically Brazil was demanding our solution before we get there, and we are of course just in the beginning. It's the one thing that is hard to explain, maybe the why not. It's because crisis is our business as usual, and not every foreign company is ready for a constant crisis. And it's good that we have Argentina just on our side, so we can show them that things can get worse. But I mean, again, it's not Brazil. Brazil is irrelevant if outside of Latin America. For international investors, like either we are a BRIC or we are Latin. We like to think that Brazil is really important, but if you are looking from outside, either they classify it as financial investors BRIC or normally like just Latin America. So part of Latin America is dealing constantly with this crisis, and many executives from the US, for those that studied here, they are not ready for that because you need like patience, and things change really, really fast. And I mean, even the best business, you can have like a big shift in politics in one day, and if you have to be ready for that.
Yeah, that was going to be my next item. But anyway, Mauro, connectivity, you were the connectivity guy. Yes. Why don't you talk just a little bit about Loon? I don't think everybody knows about it.
So Loon's mission is to connect people in rural and remote locations, sometimes after disasters as well, using stratospheric balloons that can be digital signal directly to 4G handsets. So our main mission in Brazil will be to enable people who live outside of the big centers to participate more fully on this digital transformation. Brazil, in specific, in Latin America in general, it's enormous extension. It's a lot of agriculture, and a lot of places where bringing normal terrestrial networks is really hard. So that's where we see a lot of opportunity to create value.
Excellent. By the way, the audience should feel free to make questions at any time, like in the last panel, and you guys also could feel free to ask each other questions. What I'd like you to maybe talk a little bit about, yesterday I was here with a consultancy firm, and they asked me, first thing, who's going to win the Brazilian elections? Okay. So what's going to happen to the Argentinian economy? Okay. And I told them right away, I can give you a half an hour answer, or I can go straight to the point and say, I don't know. Obviously, as we can see from yesterday. But regardless of that, perhaps you could talk about whether you think that Brazil, from a digital standpoint, has, or its needs and the potential for transformation in the digital world is so large that, do you think that has detached itself from the ups and downs of the economy, or is it still very much tied to it? Why don't we start with Henrique?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I do feel like the Brazilian economy in some way, shape, or form has kind of managed to decouple itself in the political environment. That's just my perspective. I think irrespective of who you voted for or who's in power, I think from our perspective, all customers are becoming more demanding, right? We recently did a study, right, and 89% of customers think the customer experience is as important as the product, right? And how do you provide a customer experience? You have to be connected, you have to be online, you have to take care of them of every node, every channel in which you interact with them, right? And that's not going to go away depending on how the Real is doing or who wins the elections, right? So we see it as kind of policy or politics agnostic. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, maybe just to bring an investment perspective here. I mean, investment is a long-term play, right? So, for instance, if I compare US and Brazil in terms of average holding time for companies, which basically means the difference between the time that you invest in a certain company and the time that you have the exit, in US is going to be something between 4 to 5 years. In Brazil is easily 6 to 8 years, give or take, sometimes even longer, right? So if you are concerned about kind of the short-term implications of an election, definitively you should not invest, right? But many investors are cognizant to the fact that the fundamentals of the economy are very strong. Brazil has a very large, diversified economy. So in the long term, the fact that we are facing a short-term hiccup might represent a good investment opportunity, right? Another thing that I should highlight is we see some sectors, particularly companies in technology, that are growing in a pace that is completely unrelated to the GDP, right? And certainly that brings a lot of potential in terms of investments if you are looking at long term, right? In long term.
Anybody else would like to take that?
The only other point I'll make is it doesn't affect our business or attracting local talent, but from a technology perspective, attracting talent from outside to come back to Brazil has been an issue, right? So when we talk to expats, they do not want to move because of the economy or the government, right? So that's sort of the worry. But locally, people, I don't know whether they care as much. So.
But that ties back to what Anderson was telling us earlier. What would be, maybe there's an opportunity there for initiatives for you to build local talents, help local talents, and that don't necessarily have to, they can come from any background.
So actually I want to talk on that because I just came back. Last week I was in Buenos Aires and in Santiago, and the week before I was in Sao Paulo, and the week before I was in Peru and in Mexico. And I think actually what we're seeing is two things. One, there is an incredible amount of local talent in Latin America. But I think what we're missing is a way to enable them, right? So how do we take care of that talent and develop it for the needs that the market has? And what I've seen is, at least, and recently in this past month, my takeaway was the talent was not coming back, or at least the perception was not coming back because of the economy. I think they were not coming back because they were not having the opportunities to do the work that they wanted to do, right? And now with so many engineers and with so many talented people graduating, right, and with a startup environment that is thriving, right, and with so many opportunities, talent is starting to come back. Right, and talent is starting to see now there are companies, small or big, they're trying to give them the opportunities to work on relevant problems, right? No one wanted to come back and try to find a job with I'm from Mexico, every relevant company ends with Mex, right? With the telephone company Mex or the cement company Mex, right? But now, or the petroleum company Mex, right? They didn't want to come back to that, right? Because they wanted to stay here and work in innovation and work on relevant issues, right? And do things that they felt they had a passion for. And I feel that is changing. Like, I'll tell you, you're talking about Argentina. I probably had like 7 government meetings with Argentina last week. And every person I interacted with came from the private industry. And they're like, I used to work at Telefonica, or I used to work at this company, and I've been here for a year and a half. And I make less than half of what I make, and the country's a mess, but we're working on it. And what that talked to me is there's a wave about to burst, right, in this region where you have now the talent is really paying attention and they're really coming back. It's just kind of on us and the people here, like, to give them those opportunities. Because if we don't give them a relevant problem to work on, if we don't give them the next iFood or whatever, they're going to come back right back.
Yeah, I have out of our 200 employees, 18 of them, they were living in other countries and they flew back to join us. So I think if you have this new environment, it's digital, it's more open, it's more democratic, the employee has a different role. Every company is under this transformation, so you can really attract big talent. And who is going to win the election? I hope society is going to win the election, because in this election, I think is the first time, sometimes we get pessimistic, what happened yesterday's disaster, like aggression, but we are discussing things that we were not 4 years ago. So when you see all candidates, they have to talk about hard things. They are, almost all. And they are talking about that. And society is getting understanding that the election is not fixing the country. We are fixing the country as a society. So I think this is a big shift. The same thing you saw in Argentina. My generation is joining politics, which is crazy. I have a lot of friends running for Congress, and that's something that 4 years ago just didn't happen. So I really feel like this society empowerment is the winner of the election, no matter the candidate who is going to be there.
How about you, Mauro?
So for companies that are looking for long-term impact, or for talent that's looking for purpose-driven impact, a crisis creates opportunities more than deter opportunity. So I see what's going on very much like the rest of the panel does.
Yeah. Thank you. Any questions from the audience?
Andrew D'Andrade, senior engineer at Uber, joined about in 2014. Basically, one thing I was curious, I used to work at LookWeb and Mentes up until 2011 before I came to the Valley. And I was wondering if the salary situation had changed for ICs in Brazil. Because when I left, it was normal for you to hit a ceiling very early. And then if you were to become a manager, you'd get 3 times more salary. And so there's very little incentive. Many of the people I knew who were very strong all left Brazil because they wanted to continue working. But it says they knew that their earning power was going to be severely limited unless they moved to management.
That's a good one. Come on.
Is that a question for Orlando?
That's a question.
Same company?
That's a question for everyone who's a manager. Are you paying your ICs enough?
I know at Uber we respect ICs quite a bit, so that's something we definitely look at, because I know we compare us against Google and other companies. I know there's a shift between what the Silicon Valley companies are doing in Brazil and what the local companies are doing. But I've heard this disparity too. I don't know how to fix it other than fixing what we do at Uber.
Yeah, that's a complicated one. Everyone that worked in Brazil, you know that if your salary is X, means that your company is paying 1.8X, right? So even though you might feel that your salary is kind of low, right, from the company perspective.
But the manager's salary is also 1.8X.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is kind of hard to comment. This is kind of company by company cases, right? But, of course, we had a recent strong devaluation in currency, but I think salaries in Brazil in the last 5-10 years, they increased a lot in real terms. That's a fact.
There's another question here, but I'm not going to comment on the individual contributor versus manager, but one thing I will comment on is Latin America for Salesforce has some of the lowest attrition rates in the company from an employee perspective. And I know we don't overpay, right? We don't underpay. But what we found is that what is relevant to our employees, it's stuff that goes beyond salary. So everybody here knows that Salesforce does this 1-1-1 thing, right? 1% of our time, 1% of our product, 1% of our equity. is dedicated, right, to nonprofit causes, right? And every employee has 8 days fully paid by the company to go do whatever they want. That has actually managed to be an incredibly powerful recruiting and retention tool for our employees, right? My employee base in Latin America and in Brazil is just around 30, right? So these are young people that are very talented, but also, you know, want to have on a high race, and they stay with us, right? Because they feel like it's not how much they are making, right? That's always there, and it's actually really interesting because those conversations actually happen more with my Brazilian employees than in the other regions. So it's really interesting. But I think just trying to think about something else beyond just monetary reward, right? At least for us, has proven to be important.
And giving examples, like diversity groups are still something small in Brazil. We work as a super like activist company, and employees just love it. We have a problem there we call over-engagement. So some employees, if we let them, they want to do like the veganism, the pride of we, they want to be part of the refugees. They really like want to save the world. Say, guys, we can save the world, but it's not in one day. So I always say that companies, maybe like I'm a guy, so it's not that with me. But if you are a really like open environment for diversity and you are embracing minorities, they start bringing their friends and the other friends, and they just love to be in an environment that they can be themselves. So this go really beyond money. Sometimes, of course, don't underpay, don't overpay, but they will definitely choose to work there because they believe in everything you are doing, and if you are doing it like from really like you believe, it's a way easier to attract this kind of talent that maybe are not just looking at money.
Question was initially about income inequality within a technology company. I wanted to comment on a bigger problem, which is income inequality. A couple of years ago, we did just some extensive user research in the interior of Piauí in Brazil. We asked questions to middle schoolers about what they would do if their village had constant, reliable access to the internet. And very consistently, we heard that the difference it would make is that they would try to get an online education and an online job instead of migrating to São Paulo or Rio to work on construction. So I think the kind of work that you all are doing on modernizing the economy and creating jobs that are more inclusive and democratic in terms of backgrounds can help ameliorate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Enrique and especially Lucas read my mind, so they answered my question, especially about diversity, because being in the Bay Area for 1.5 years, this is one thing that we see that is so strong here. I think we all, as Brazilians, need to start to think how we can do that in our country.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we find that when we talk about, like, Uber cares now a lot about diversity and inclusion, starting with inclusive environments and then how can we build out diversity. We find that in different, the non-US regions, they're like, why are they imposing the US culture, right? And then as we educate, we think, oh, this is actually important, right? And it's not maybe racial diversity, but there are different types of people being inclusive. So that's a very important thing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. My name is Gustavo. I'm a co-founder at Singu, which is the largest Brazilian beauty and wellness app. And my question to the panel today is about talent evasion. So there are lots of talks that like good brains are evading Brazil. They are running to the US. And I had the opportunity to talk about a lot of people about this. I graduated from MIT a couple of years ago. I also participated in many like international science and math Olympiads. And I kind of come to the conclusion that the main driven for people to come back to their countries after they spend some time here in the US or in great universities here and abroad as well is purpose. So do you guys agree that purpose is the main driver for this comeback? If so, how do we go about creating the sense of purpose, about reinforcing the sense of purpose in Brazilians? And if not, if you guys disagree, what do you guys think is the driver?
Very quick comment on that. Sometimes in Brazil we have this mercantilistic approach that we should not let talent go. Let's keep talent here. That's the wrong way. Everybody can do whatever they want. Let them go, and let's attract people from outside as well. As the more people we send, the more people we have in the hubs, the more connected we're gonna be. So I don't care if people want to come back. Great. If they found purpose in our company, even better. But if they want to stay there and bring their kids and their mom to know what is this and other places, this has a big effect. So we should try to, in Brazil, we don't have any university with classes in English. So this is a disaster, because how can you attract talent and people to live there if, we speak, unfortunately, a language that, or fortunately, I would say, a beautiful language, but nobody speaks that language. So we have to figure out a way to attract people, starting with our flight, Margarese. We need our flight.
we need a non-stop to so well.
Anybody else would like to take that?
Yeah, maybe just a slightly different angle for your question. In the last few years, I got many questions around from Brazilian entrepreneurs like yourself that wanted to have a presence here in the US, right? And for those folks, I always kind of told the same thing, right? I would think about three things on that. So if you want to establish a presence in the US in a credible way, the first thing I would think about is look at your customer base, see if, especially if you're a B2B, I know it's not your case, but so if you have kind of an international company that can sponsor your move, it's a customer of yourself in Brazil and somehow can sponsor your move to US, that would make things much easier because that becomes a referable customer, right? And that makes a lot of difference. The second thing that also makes a lot of difference is that either you have like an international fund, VC, backing you up, or a Brazilian fund with strong connections here in the Valley. That also makes the job much easier. And the third thing, and I know this can be a little bit polemical, right? But if you want to have a presence here in the US, it is important to have, for sales and marketing positions, people, Americans, right? People, Brazilians with broken English or accent will not help you in that particular job. So it's important that you have sales and marketing people that understand the culture, right? Have the right connections, right? And certainly that we will accelerate the process. Right.
Hi, Pat Burtis from Amadeus Capital. Great panel. Thank you very much. We have 5 big and important technology companies represented here, but nobody from China. Would be curious to hear your perspective on the introduction of Chinese technology companies in a very big way into Brazil, as well as SoftBank as well, if you'd be interested to comment on that.
We all love SoftBank. in our case, we were talking about that yesterday. There is a big opportunity for us to be a platform for Chinese companies to expand into the world. We recently announced a large investment in China, and this is already happening in Brazil. For instance, we have Baidu with us. Next year, we are organizing like delegations of those Chinese, because tech companies in Brazil, Chinese tech companies are not that big, but there are like in infrastructure. Chinese is a main partner, so it goes beyond technology. And in our case, we see this like we want to be a platform to help them grow there in Brazil, attracting more investment for us and for them.
That's a great question. If I can make a few comments on this. Recently we had in our portfolio 2 companies that were acquired by Chinese players. So Didi acquired 99, Syngenta, which is a European company, but maybe most of you don't know that. Syngenta was acquired by the Chinese. Yeah, so they are, the shareholders are Chinese, right, at least. And also we had 2 companies in our portfolio that received investment from SoftBank. So this is happening, right? I think that, Chinese companies, we see a lot of tension between US and China recently. So the government in US blocking acquisitions by Chinese companies and vice versa. And I think that at least to this point, Brazil has been friendly to M&A driven by Chinese companies, right? So, and that's certainly, that should be certainly a trend for the coming years.
Yes, it's very interesting, very good question. It feels to me, and I was talking to some of you yesterday, that Brazil may be the scenario for a proxy war, tech war between China and the US. That's where they're going to face each other off and perhaps develop strategies on how to prevail on that. Just being a lawyer, I don't see much Chinese competition. In fact, one of my clients say, you're very lucky, you don't have imports from China. So, yeah, of course. Anyway, we have a question here.
Hi, my name is Fernanda. I'm from F2 Global, a language service provider from San Francisco. I'd like to know if you could comment on how you structure your companies in terms of adapting your content to Latin America, Brazil, and the other countries as well. I know that Uber and Salesforce, they have their localization departments, but I'd like to know if you can talk a little bit about the structure of the language inside.
Can I answer the question? Because I had a similar question. Not only the content, but given that you're a recent entrant in the market, some of you, how do you adapt not only your content, but your business strategy to the Brazilian market?
Yeah, well, we try to, as much as possible, keep what was our strengths here there. So our message being simple, replace trying to use the consumer base that we had in other countries. And then in terms of marketing, people in Brazil, we have, I don't know, a lot of energy. So we changed a little bit. Instead of being more online, we decided to do endless events. So we were doing much more than in other countries because we were trying to connect to people, particularly before opening a building, where we couldn't show what we had. So basically, the idea was being very personal, and instead of digital, physical. And then now with time, we are scaling, going more digital. But in the beginning, the idea was trying to exchange this energy in person, showing people that the magic of the space will be like the person that will be around you. So that was a bit the difference we did in Brazil compared to other countries.
So you mean that you create your content locally in Brazil?
Well, this is you are growing crazy. So we start with translations even from Google Translator, I think, and then with time we had people go. It was myself. In the beginning, I was the one taking the phone calls, and there was a horrible one that we had faça o seu negócio crescer, make your business grow. And then in Portuguese, it's not the best translation, but then you learn fast and you keep growing.
Have you considered having professionals doing
now?
The
Yes, now we have internally. We had since the beginning architects and designers, which is our core business, that they were flying in. And then after that, we had a copywriter. So it was, guys, we cannot have this anymore. So let's hire someone to take care. But this is exponential growth. So it's all very fast.
I'll give you my business card.
Yeah, I guess beyond the localization, which is an important problem as well, is sort of how do you adapt the products to work for the local economy, right, and the local needs. So the way, at least in Uber, we think there are two things. One is from an input perspective, we do have during the planning sessions, all the regional general managers come in and kind of give a perspective. So the product leads understand what product is, what are the products we need to be building. But we do think of this as a more transportation platform, at least at Uber. So we allow some amount of localization, some amount of tweaking that the local markets can do. for their local needs. And that's definitely very, very important, right? Because we don't want to be an American company. We don't want to be an American solution, right? Someone locally can evolve this is very important to us.
In the case of Loon, our go-to-market strategy is through local mobile carriers. So we don't do it directly. We leave it to the professionals. In terms of strategy and marketing and those kinds of roles that we have based here, we're trying to hire people with relevant experience in Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, which are our target markets, so that we have the proper expertise to do the planning as well. But the execution is local.
Okay, I think we are running out of time. I'd like to thank the panelists. Thank you very much. It has been very interesting. And thank the audience for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to have all of you here. And you're going to hang out a little bit more, right? With us. I know you have to leave. Yeah, I know. Okay, but the others will be hanging out here with us. Thank you so much, guys. It was fantastic.